Today we're looking at a Total Control MP16 from the 1990s. It has 16 modems on board, which provide dial-in access to the 16 corresponding serial ports on the other side. This lets you dial in over an analog telephone line and interact with gear over serial on the other end. We'll break out a terminal, and a lot of other stuff, to figure out how to use this thing. Let's get into it. And I must say, the seller shipped it in a pretty impressive box. I grew up in Washington State, so I haven't seen one of these in a long time. I'm going to get it out of here. It's been all hacked up, so I won't feel too bad getting rid of it. But yeah, that was funny to see on my doorstep. And here it is unwrapped, a USRobotics Total Control MP/16. I have not definitively determined what the MP stands for, but my best guess is modem pool. Because if we get it flipped around and take a look at the back, it's got 16 analog modems, V34 modems on the back, along with a corresponding 16 RS-232 ports with RJ45 jacks. So the idea is you use a converter. I don't know if this particular cable is going to work. Hopefully we can figure it out and get serial access. I believe the idea is you have telephone lines coming off of this. You dial in with a modem on another computer, and one of these can be configured to give you terminal access over here to machines you've got plugged in over here. So it's a telephone system based terminal server. Or, as the eBay listing points out, it could also be a film/TV prop. And I'm getting a little nervous. I was reading a manual for what is clearly not this one before I unboxed it a few minutes ago. The manual had dedicated console access ports so we could configure it, some Ethernet ports and stuff, and this one is clearly a different model. So we're going to have to figure out how to dial in and manage it, I'm guessing. Got quite a few dip switches right here. Looks like a lot to do with how you configure the modems. Local echo, normal DTR operation, verbal result codes, all sorts of stuff. That'll be fun. So we're going to figure out how to use this thing, and it got a lot more interesting because not having a dedicated console port makes that a little less obvious. So I got to go find the manual for this exact model. But as I was unboxing it, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, there's something in there. So before we power it on, I want to make sure I get whatever screw is in there out so we don't short something. And of course it says no operator serviceable parts inside. Refer servicing to qualified professional, which is me at the moment. It's not totally obvious how it comes apart. There's a bunch of rivets on the bottom that aren't of any use to us. So I'm just going to take out screws until I can figure out how to get the lid off. Looks like it used to belong to the county of Anoka, which I just looked up as in Minnesota, which makes sense. That's where the seller shipped it from. Not having a ton of luck so far, but we're making progress. This clearly comes this direction. Check this out. It's coming off. There's hope. Oh, nice. Okay, that was actually pretty easy. I'm happy to report the screw rattling around inside has been retrieved. Don't know what it went to. Don't like that. It smells, you know, about how you'd expect it to. Here's the modem bank area, and we can see USRobotics copyright 1994, model 0304. In fact, Ben Jeffrey just did a video on a USRobotics net server, which is a lot more interesting than this item. That video was great. I'll link down to it in the description below, so definitely go check that out. What else we got here? On the main board area, we've got a bunch of NEC chips, and some Texas Instrument chips that have USRobotics part numbers on them. Nothing too exciting. Up in the corner you can see another USRobotics copyright 94, so this thing is over 30 years old. There is another logic board down in here, and there's an Easter egg screen printed on it. Let me see if I can get you a shot of that. Can you just barely see whatever that is down there? I can't really tell what it is. I love it when manufacturers do stuff like that. I'd give you a better shot, but I don't really feel like taking it apart more than I have to. I'm also feeling pretty stupid because I'm seeing it right here on the top one. I think it's a signature. Right there. Someone's initials, JRS maybe? That's exactly the same as the board on the bottom. Which makes sense because clearly there's just 2 of everything in here. I think there was an 8-port model, and they must have had a 24-port as well. Because if you take a look in here, it sure seems like it's ready to accept a 3rd set of these boards. Anyway, let's plug this thing in and see if we can blow up any capacitors. It does have a power switch on the back, a nice one, I will say. Pretty sure any signs of life are going to come from the front, so this is on, and let's give it power. Pretty quiet fan. It's doing some diagnostics or whatever, and now it's just saying it's running. Now what? I need to go learn about these dip switches, and I'm going to put the case back on because nothing catastrophic is going on in there, and I need to find a manual. So I'm going to do all that and be back. It's about to get interesting. I got this thing back together, and this might be the first video I've ever made where I put all the screws back in and didn't lose one. Though maybe not technically accurate because we have the mystery screw that was in there, but close enough. I found a manual for the 8-port version, and that's going to work just fine, I think. It wasn't obvious to me before when I was looking around this thing, but these dip switches correspond to the top 8 ports, these to the bottom, so they're probably totally isolated units in a simple unit like this. And I believe what we're going to do is I can get these dip switches in the right situation. We'll just try it out of the box first, you know, in their current settings and see what happens. But I'm going to hook a terminal up to port 1, and that's going to let me configure the first modem if I was on port 12, 12th modem. And from a terminal, I can actually issue these things called AT commands, and I can configure each modem as I wish. Another interesting thing we might try right away, it's got an internal NVRAM storage to persist all the configuration you're making, assuming it's not battery backup or whatever. I didn't see a battery in there. But you can flip the last dip switch and tell it to load from its default ROM. That's this guy right here. So if the switch is on, it's going to load with defaults. And both of those are currently up, which is the off position, which would make sense. Someone came in here and configured it, and they wanted their settings to be persisted. We'll leave it just for fun, I guess. Let's get a terminal hooked up. I told you it was going to get interesting. The terminal is powered up.
Battle cruiser operational.
This beautiful thing is a Digital Equipment Corporation VT520 terminal, and this is the dongle we're about to subject it to. This is just a dumb terminal, so if you've ever used like PuTTY over serial, that's a terminal emulator, essentially pretending to be one of these, or it's capable of pretending to be one of these. And the idea here is I'm going to slap this on the back. It's got a 25-pin serial connection. I have to gender change and null modem that over to this RJ45 cable, and we'll get that plugged into one of these modem serial ports. Port 1 corresponds to 1, 2 to 2, and so on. Get this plugged in, and this thing has the keyboard hooked up, and if we power this on, and all the settings are magically correct, which I'm sure they won't be, we'll have to mess with these dip switches, we should be able to issue commands to that modem. Well, let's find out. I'm going to boot up the Total Control, and there's a good chance we're going to have to mess with settings on the Total Control with those dip switches, maybe some settings on this thing, maybe the dongle, or all three. This thing comes up quick, just poke my head around here, and it's got that single green light on, which means we're good to go. I suppose we can toggle the dip switches live, maybe not, I don't know. Maybe I'll read the manual. So I'm going to try to type an AT command, and there's no echo, which it might be okay. I really need one of those little adapters that you put in line with the serial connection, and it shows you what all the signals are doing. I'm trying all sorts of different stuff. This is my serial to USB, trying that on my machine. No luck with this so far. I'll be back. It's like 2 hours later, and I'm getting nowhere fast. So what I'm trying to do is use any combination of cables I have to make one that works before I break down and I make my own. I've read the pinouts and everything. I know it doesn't seem like it. I am intellectually capable of making my own custom cable adapter, but I'm just trying to avoid that for the past 2 hours to save time. My final hope is I've got these Cisco DB25 to RJ45 console cables. I've got 2 of them, and I cannot find them. I've been looking through all my stuff. That one didn't have it, like, you know, and like, I also would not recommend storing your cables this way. It's a huge pain to like pull these bins in and out. So anyway, it's not in any of these. It's probably in here, but I've looked and I can't find it. It's black, unfortunately, like the vast majority of these cables. It's pretty easy to spot. Ooh, this might be it. No, this is too long. That's not it. If you watched the last video, my wife is back home, so she hasn't been downstairs yet. So I gotta hide this stuff pretty soon. As you can see, it's a real mystery as to how I keep losing things. Why does this keep happening to me? You ever have those moments where you just sit back and ask yourself, what is it all for? What am I doing? I found it. It was also getting pretty adventurous. Got a laptop with a modem, some phones, Cisco unit giving me dial tone. We won't need that quite yet. I was actually just trying to dial in on the modem side. Couldn't really get it working, but we'll get there. Let's try this cable. I have no faith. If this doesn't work, I'll make my own. It doesn't work. Issuing enters and AT. No response from the modem on the other end, theoretically on the other end. Then I've tried every conceivable combination of transmit speed, flow controls, all that. I still haven't found the exact manual. So I found manuals that were very similar. Some of these have dedicated console ports. I haven't found the one for this exact unit. So I'm gonna go off and do that, and we'll make a cable. What's gonna happen here is we're gonna make a DB9 EIA 561 to RJ45 connector. And I know, it even says it on the diagram. This is technically an 8P8C plug, and right there, commonly referred to as RJ45. You don't have to let me know it's 8P8C. 8P8C is not going to happen. Everyone calls them RJ45 for better or worse. Still haven't found the right manual. In fact, if you Google MP16, V34 manual PDF, this is like the only result you get in Google, literally. Let me see if I can show you. The one result. And it's someone back in the year 2000 at cmu.edu. What college is that? A prestigious one. Carnegie Mellon. I should have known that. Let's see, they're talking about they're having trouble, and they link to the manual. And it, of course, is not there anymore, and the archive did not scrape it. So I was this close. I was so close. At any rate, we're going to make this thing. I don't think it's going to be too bad. I'll show you. I'll bring you along for the journey. How about that? So I pulled myself off a pretty good length of Cat6 cable, and I've got a DB9 serial breakout, and I'll be able to strip this down, plug those into the right spots there, crimp a connector on the other end. This is a way I do recommend storing stuff. This is like my crimping, cabling, low voltage kit here. And so I've got the 8P8C connector we're gonna need, my crimper. So I'm gonna take care of that, and I'll be back. Not my finest work, but we're not exactly blasting gigabit Ethernet through it, so I focused hopefully on getting everything in the right place. Now we'll do this side. So on this side I'll give myself quite a bit of cable, like so. Get rid of this crap. The trick will be, how well can I strip these wires? Let's see. Not that one. There we go. Perfect. And there it is, our very own EIA 561 serial cable. We'll take it right into the computer, I think, rather than this terminal for now, just to cut down on dongles. And we'll plug this in, power this back up, and play around. Let's load up PuTTY. These are my default settings for messing with any serial gear. 9600 baud is a really typical rate. Again, I couldn't find the exact manual, but a lot of them said to connect at 19200. So let's just try 9600 baud out of curiosity. And pull the terminal over here. And the fact that we can type in PuTTY is a good sign. Well, well, well. That means the modem is talking to us on port 1. And yep, just needed to make this cable, save myself, took me all of less than 10 minutes to make that cable, and I spent 4 hours dicking around with existing cables. Anyway, okay, this is good news. Let's see if we can hook this up to the actual terminal with some simple adapters, just out of curiosity. Told you I could make one of these, I just didn't want to. Fun story, remember how I couldn't find this one? I theoretically have another one of these. I lost it, of course. That's why this one was new in package. because I needed it for something, for another video. And then last night it broke down and bought a third one. So things are going good there. It gets better. I've made at least 2 of these before for another terminal server, not a modem based one. And I made them, I have these DB9 deals that you can solder to, you know, and I couldn't find those either. So here we are. I'm just gonna buy a bunch of pre-made ones of these and be done with it, so I can lose those too. But enough of that. I would like to try to plug this thing into the deck terminal, and I haven't lost this yet. This is a DB25-9 adapter, a little gender changer on there. And this might not work. I don't know exactly if this is adhering to the same standard we just built this to. It might cross some cables in ways we don't expect, but I'm going to slap this monstrosity on the back of the terminal. There's promise. When I flip this guy on, I got some garbage characters on the screen, which means this thing at least attempted to talk to that over serial, probably at the wrong speed. Theoretically, you would ideally pair this with a deck terminal keyboard, but it also just has a PS2 port. That's what this keyboard is plugged in with. So you can hit caps lock print screen, and that's how you bring up this menu with all the settings. I have a whole video dedicated to this thing. I even talked to my mom on the phone. She used to work at DEC, if you want to check that out.
Well, I don't even have a computer, yet I work for a computer company. So this is what I don't get, and I sent it back.
So I think I had previously saved a pretty high transmit speed. Let's get that down to 9600. And everything else should be the same as the putty session we just did. So AT, yeah. Oh, something's up. So we're getting double everything. I have an idea. So let's go back in here. Let's go to communication. Let's turn off this local echo. And I realized to get out of here, I can just press caps lock print screen again. I used to like go back through the menu and go all the way to exit, but you can just caps lock print screen. Let's try. Yep. Look at that. Okay, this is really good. And you can open this menu back up, and it's got some internal storage. So I'm going to save my settings. They're now on pretty default settings for almost any serial device. So it's just so I don't forget. Okay, we can talk to this serial port. The next step is to dial into its corresponding modem and use this, albeit on a bench with all the gear in the same place, in the same way someone really would have used it back in the day. Let me show you my local telecom, or telco if you're in the biz. This is a Cisco 2911 router, and it's got an FXS card installed with 4 lines. And in here, basically, I've got this thing configured so that I can plug this into a phone or a modem and dial a number, and it will call this one plugged into another phone or modem, and vice versa. This is my telecom provider. And she's pretty loud and takes quite a while to boot up, so we'll be turning on the noise canceling. Put it down there to make the noise canceling better. Also, I'm breaking the #1 rule. If you're making YouTube videos, never talk about the audio quality. Always try to make it the best you can. Never complain about it, because now it's all you're going to think about. Anyway, sorry, the rest of the video is ruined, but if you're making YouTube videos, now you know. Never do what I'm doing. Oh, check out that Chloe toy down there. That's her favorite one, Mr. Owl. Okay, I know I always do this, but it's actually literally for me to know that the phone lines are working correctly before I start messing around with modems. So when I pick each of these phones up, I've already tested. I have a dial tone. Remember, there were 2 ports on that FXS card. One is plugged into each one, and I'm going to call this phone, and you can do this with a bunch of Cisco equipment that is relatively affordable online, on eBay, especially in your local area. You can get pretty lucky. So if you want to do this stuff, probably got the busy signal, so I'm starting over. But if I can remember, I do have a dial tone, 425. Remember, I grew up in Washington. 271-6666. That phone is ringing. Okay. Off camera, I'm going to test the other way, because this Amazon $3 special has the worst ringtone you've ever heard. and then we're going to do some modem stuff. Back to the 2 lines that are plugged into that FXS card on my quote-unquote telecom provider. If you dial 425-271-5555, you'll get this one. So that is what we're going to plug into modem port 1. And this guy, doesn't really matter what it's dialing, but we're going to dial from this machine. We're going to call up this modem. And so this thing has a built-in modem. Maybe we'll try some other ones just for fun. This is a Windows 7 laptop. Let's get this thing going. As that is booting, which will take all of 5 seconds because, you know, Windows used to be good. It's funny, I'm sort of reflecting. I wouldn't have been able to do any of this. This thing would have been a total mystery to me if it wasn't for the last 2 years of videos I've made. I didn't know anything about telephony. Let me preface this. I don't know a lot about any of it. I'm not an expert in any of this. I'm a layman in a lot of things. A man of all trade, jack of all trades, master of none is better than a master of one. Anyway, that's me. So I know a little bit about telephony. I know a little bit about serial connections. I know a little bit about terminals. And the point is, I wouldn't have been able to do any of what you've seen so far without all the trials and tribulations of the videos that came before it. And I think there's a life lesson in there. You just got to get in there and try stuff. Let's get in here. This is definitely not my wife's name as my password. This was donated by my buddy Andy, who is, oh, side note, I think I've said this before. I think it's just funny to run the not genuine copy of Windows. Anyway, my buddy Andy donated this to me. He's donated a ton of stuff to the channel that you have already seen and a bunch of stuff you have not seen unless you're a patron. A huge thanks to him. Probably owe him a text. Probably owe him a beer. So let's see here. I'm going to get into Device Manager. Like I was saying about those previous videos, I think I just recently learned you go to Modems. So this is the integrated modem that I just plugged that thing into. And I think I can go to Properties, over to Modem. Right there, it's on COM3. Let's see if the Windows 7 search is better than Windows 11. I would suspect it is. There's no ads. This is over here by default. At any rate, let's load up COM3. That's what we want. That is the integrated modem that we're plugged into right here. So this guy, Windows exposes serial devices over what they call COM ports. COM number 3 is this one. So I am talking to this laptop's modem. And so I should be able to say AT, and it says back, okay, we're going to dial into the total control. ATDT. I believe we said it was 425-271-5555. Let me check that real quick. All right, I confirmed that's the right line. Hello, Mr. Owl. And in the process, this line fell out because this phone cord doesn't have that little clip that keeps it in there. So, you know, gotta be careful. So what should happen when we do this is the modem in the laptop is going to call this number and it's going to reach the total control. And this guy should be able to talk to this guy over a modem connection, as if this was over the telco provider. You know, we're back in, I don't know, the mid-90s. It's over a dial-up telephone line, and we're getting here through AT&T or whatever. So let's see. I don't think this modem has a speaker or anything, so you just kind of, ooh, this guy just made a click, and this guy is saying ring. It saw a ring. It should just automatically connect, I think. Yeah, they are. They're doing it. They're doing it. It's happening, folks. They might be connected already. The Windows laptop also says they're connected at 33.6K. One of these dip switches is auto answer, so, you know, answer after the first ring, and I've always left that in the enabled position. So assuming this is working as well as I think it is, if I type on this keyboard, which is connected to that guy, it's just going to show up on the terminal over here and vice versa. If I type on this one, it's going to show up over there. Let's start with the laptop. So I'm going to type hello, and there's no local echo on, but the terminal got it. So I'm typing on the laptop some more. I did a new line, hello, how are you? Wow, awesome. trying to see if I can capture this in a way that makes it look like I'm not lying to you. So I'm going to type on this one. I'm going to say, hello. Caps lock is on apparently. No local echo here, but hopefully you can see way up in here, it does say hello. So if you were like two kids back in the 90s, you might get this going. You could send binary files to each other. You probably wouldn't have a Total Control MP16 now that I'm thinking about it, but this isn't really how this would be used. Like, really, you'd have a real computer connected to this and you would dial up and get into it. My hunch is that this was, in the early days, probably used for literally getting into your computers at work that matter. A little bit later, it would be what we would call a terminal server. So an IT administrator that is in control of 16 or less servers in a data center, they would have the ability to dial in over modems. It's also a modem pool, so there might be more interesting ways to use this. I think this one is not particularly sophisticated. I think like Modem 4 is always tied to Modem 4, 1-to-1, and so on. There were more advanced versions of this that would let you dial in with one number and select a modem, perhaps? I mean, anyway, I'm not sure. Let's do something a little more realistic. Well, what I was going to do is get this modem hooked up to this terminal, and we were going to dial out to the server room over here. We've got the Total Control hooked up. The retro rack is powered up. This guy right here is actually able to give me an analog telephone line just like the other Cisco unit in the workshop over there. And maybe you can see that white cable way back in there is actually plugged into the modem on the bench I was just showing you. I can dial this line right here. And the plan was to dial into the serial port on the back of one of these Sunfires. So this Sunfire V240 is up and powered on. On the back, it's got a serial port, of course. And so the idea was to plug the Total Control into that and dial in and get a login prompt, very much the way someone would have used this back in the day. However, we're hitting some issues. Probably some cabling issues again, so I need more adapters. And then bumping up against my Unix knowledge to set up a TTY correctly for dial in and log in over the serial port on this Sunfire. So that's not working. I'll show you what it does. So I was like, okay, well, let's at least try to manage a Cisco device. I've been messing around with these wires and pins and stuff, try to get it right. No luck, but we're kind of like halfway there. We will attempt to manage this guy, which just happens to be the one providing the telephone line, so that's kind of funny. So back in here, this phone line, I can dial a number to reach the Total Control on it. So we'll do that right now, ATDT, and the number happens to be 200. Modems talking to each other. Very good. That's the Total Control modem and this modem getting ready. So we connected, and I have noticed that the Total Control won't even establish a connection if it doesn't think a live device is on the serial port. So we're almost there. Remember, this is plugged into a Cisco device, but nothing. I cannot get any output to come back, and it was the same on the serial port on the Sunfire. So unfortunately, that's not going to work. I mean, it will work eventually when I get everything fixed up, but I'm going out of town this weekend. That's the story of my life this year, and I'm out of time to mess around with this stuff. But the good news is, in future videos, definitely this year, I will be getting this RS6000 brought to life. I did a video previously, it boots up and everything, but I never got a hard drive in it, so I want to get Unix installed on that guy, and I'll do a whole dedicated video on using something like the Total Control to dial in and get access to a serial port that lets you log in to a Unix machine. I've also got a bunch of IBM P-Series gear that I want to do the same thing with. So this stuff will be back in future videos, and I'll do a dedicated, I don't know what to call it, serial port login video, I guess. And I'll actually go through the, how you could configure it in Solaris and all that once I figure it out. But that's all I was going to do. I was just going to show you this thing, talking to the Total Control, some device on the other end. Essentially what we already did in here, but a little more real because it's in a different room. So that's it for the Total Control. It works. I'm really happy about that. Any problems I had along the way were user error and cabling and probably some configuration on the Sunfire I'm getting wrong. But you'll see it again. I don't know how I'm going to incorporate it into the rack or even if I will, but I will be using it in future videos, and we'll do that serial port stuff I was talking about. Sorry for the abrupt ending, but that's about all I can show you with it right now. So, like I was saying, it'll be back. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed following along as I stumbled my way through the Total Control MP16. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. I've also got a Patreon where I post early releases, behind the scenes, and that sort of thing. And you also get access to the Serial Port Discord, which has a bunch of cool folks in there. I think, actually, that is how I found out about the eBay listing for the Total Control. So thanks, guys. I've got a huge backlog of video ideas and just not enough time to do them, so hopefully you'll see more videos coming out faster. I know I keep saying that, but I'm trying. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.